Welcome to the Helm 360 podcast, where we bring you the latest insights and updates in the legal industry. Today's podcast episode was recorded before the announcement of the acquisition of a majority stake in Elite by private equity firm TPG. As a longtime partner of Thomson Reuters Elite, Helm 360 understands the potential uncertainties and transitions this may bring for customers. We want to assure you that we are here to support you throughout this process and into the future. We believe this transaction will provide Elite with greater focus, resources, and growth opportunities. Join us as we delve into the legal technology landscape, past, present, and future, with Patrick Hurley, Vice President of Global Specialty Support at Elite Technology. And now, on to the show.
Hello, Legal Helm listeners. Today on our show, I'm excited to be talking with Patrick Hurley, Vice President of Global Specialty Support at Thomson Reuters. Patrick's career at Thomson Reuters spans over 25 years, where he's played some of the most impactful roles, including managing product lines that have survived the test of time at some of the largest law firms in the world. You know what I'm talking about, Elite WebView. He has long been known for his unique ability to build long-lasting connections with customers, employees, and partners alike. He also happens to be my ex-boss, colleague, and above all, a dear friend. And today I'm going to be talking to Patrick about legal technology landscape, past, present, and future. Patrick, thank you very much for taking time out of your busy schedule to talk to me today, and welcome to the show.
Thanks very much. It's a pleasure to be here. Just to be clear, ex-boss, but not ex-friend, right?
Oh, that's right. Yes, my bad. Current friend.
Okay, good. I was thinking so. Just want to make sure. But yeah, happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Excellent. So I thought we could start right at the very beginning, and I'm really keen to learn a little bit about how you ended up in the legal technology space to begin with.
Right at the beginning, back many decades ago. Yeah, it was very random, like so many people's careers. When young folks ask me for career advice, it's so much about being in the right place at the right time. Yeah, I was struggling out of university to find any kind of job whatsoever. Ended up getting a temp job in the file room with some of an office junior at a law firm, which was supposed to be 2 weeks, so someone was on holiday, but they liked me better than the guy who was on holiday, so they offered to be permanent. Happened to be when they were putting in computers. That's how old I am. And so they sent everybody to learn, WordPerfect and DOS, and, Novell networking. And it sort of made sense to me more than most of the other people in the office. So I kind of became the de facto computer guy without any formal training. I spent a few years there and then moved to this little tiny startup software company that about 30 people just sold software to law firms in Southern California called Elite Data Processing. And that's how the journey began.
Excellent. And it's so interesting and revealing to hear words like Novell, and a lot of our audience probably don't even know what that means, but it gives an indication as to how old we both are. As I mentioned in your intro, you obviously enjoyed a very long career at Thomson Reuters and continue to do so. What would you say stands out as your biggest achievements being at Thomson Reuters?
I'm incredibly grateful and lucky and privileged to have had such an interesting and varied career there at Thomson Reuters. Elite was purchased by then Thomson. Before the Thomson Reuters merger, Elite was purchased in 2003. So I've been really lucky to have lived in 3 countries with the business, had roles in product management and technology and professional services, and started in support and now I'm back in a support role and, working with products all across the corporation, not just those in legal, which is exciting accomplishments. I mean, every day is development, but I get my job satisfaction out of the human interactions. You mentioned WebView, which, if I look at where that product was when we launched it and how it's still in use today, almost 30 years later, there are still major law firms running WebView. I was one of many people involved in the success of WebView, so that's exciting. But what I get job satisfaction out of is the human interaction. So turning customers from unhappy to generally happy, satisfied through efforts, seeing colleagues succeed, seeing their teammates and people that started out junior to me having successful careers. You, Bim, are a prime example of someone I'm proud to say I worked with and maybe helped you a little bit to get where you are. And those kind of things are where I get my greatest sense of accomplishment.
Thank you very much. And yes, you did. And you helped me a lot, actually, to kind of get to where I am. So I'm very grateful for that.
I didn't mean to ask for that, really, but you're a good example. You've been successful beyond any of our probably dreams at the time, leaving took Thomson Reuters ultimately you're in the industry, making good things happening and partnering with Thomson Reuters in a really mutually beneficial way for both our businesses.
Appreciate that. You touched on WebView again, and I kind of do want to just dig into that a little bit more, because even today, like, I still speak to customers who love the product. Some of them still use the product and actually find it difficult to let go of the product, right? It's that good. What do you think the secret to success was for WebView? Why did it hit the market so well? Why have lawyers in particular fallen in love with using it?
That really sort of makes me think back. As I mentioned, so much of it is right place at the right time. It was the right time for that product. Historically, I've seen us being ahead of our time, and then those products, can't quite make it. And, I think the original idea for a name, I think we marketed it this way as a little bit, was a lawyer's desktop. And that's a concept that still you'll see many software companies out there with that exact same concept, if not that same branded name. But it was sort of the first, because lawyers were just starting to become computer literate. When I started at Elite, you'll never get a lawyer to use a computer. The secretaries will do it. And WebView came out right about the time when younger lawyers were saying, no, I want a computer. I want to be able to look at stuff on my own. I use a computer at home. I should have one at the office. And don't let me ask my secretary for everything. Give me the data. It was timing. And of course, the amazing development team we had. And, I left the product management of that many, many years ago. Got to give a shout out to Patty Gettle, who shepherded it through its major successes for many, many, many years after that.
Yes, indeed. And obviously I had the pleasure of supporting that product for Thomson Reuters when I was there as well.
So it takes a village.
Yeah. And I think there's a lot, there are some lessons to learn from a product like that, because I think, like you said, timing was one of the things, but also I think it did exactly what it needed to do for the community of users that were using it, right? It gave them the information they needed in an easy to consume manner. And I think there's a lot of products these days that could learn from that, right? Simplicity, I think, is sometimes the key to success there. And I think maybe that's one of the reasons that drove the success of it and why people still love it today.
Yeah, we did a lot, which was still relatively nascent in the software community, I think. I mean, we had user groups and we had focus groups. And we had a lot of, how about this? Sharing prototypes, releasing early versions to customers. That's more common today, but it was sort of new for us and new among our competitors that we were really taking very, very immediate feedback from what the market was telling us they liked and didn't like. So all of that, I think, helped a lot.
So you've spent obviously some time in that product space a long time ago, but a lot of the roles that you've played have been around service delivery and really client-facing, customer-facing, managing customer relationships. And from the outside looking in, it's obvious to me that you've built a reputation based on trust and building trusted relationships with those customers. And I'm really interested to kind of understand, what's your approach to kind of getting there, to building a customer relationship that is built on trust, and most importantly, then keeping it intact for a long period of time? Because I think there's some really, nice lessons to learn for the community of listeners that we have here in terms of how to build those long-lasting relationships.
Well, first of all, thank you for those kind words. I like to think I approach every interaction with trust first. We're not going into anything in an antagonistic or adversarial approach. And I think it's not B2B, it's business to business. It's people to people. I'm not talking to the law firm. I'm talking to a person who has a job, who has a boss, who has their own personal stresses, their own insecurities, their own challenges. It's person to person. So every interaction is a human interaction. It's not about business. And if you can approach things with that kind of empathy for another person's situation, and ultimately, invariably, both parties want the same thing in any interaction, which is they both want to win, right? To be successful. And that win makes it sound like a competition. I don't really mean that, but they both want success for the software product that they bought or for the project that they're working on. Nobody wants the other side to fail. I'm like throwing cliche after cliche at you, but there's some truth to those cliches.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And very wise words. I kind of want to switch gears a little bit, focus a little bit on the legal and professional services industry that we serve. And obviously, like, the last few years have been challenging for the industry generally and most companies out there. What challenges do you see for the year ahead in terms of the legal and professional services industry from your perspective?
I think not dissimilar to the challenges that every business is facing, and that is sort of the future of work. What is it that things are changing so rapidly, and a lot of the speed of that change is due to the pandemic. From a legal services, professional services industry, there are going to be changes in the kind of balance between lawyer support staff ratio, both with the issue of remote working. We don't need as many support staff supporting a brick and mortar building, but we're also finding senior level partners just becoming that much more self-sufficient working at home because there isn't somebody right outside their door to print that document or get that file or, do that task. People are tackling things from a more holistic approach, while at the same time, technology like AI, things like robotic process automation, all the kind of easy stuff is going to be taken away by technology. And what is that going to do to the kind of human resources makeup of a law firm? I think, would it be a challenge or just something that they're going to have to adapt with? And I think what the pandemic taught us all is, forced, we can all change. And will law firms remember that lesson? They can change, and they proved it with the lockdown.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the change in which the way that we work has kind of impacted things is quite interesting. Last year, I was over in our India office, and it was quite interesting because we'd hired like a bunch of people through the pandemic that had never been to the office, right? And some of them were quite young, some of them graduates from university, for example. And they'd literally never been into an office and understood the kind of collaborative working space that an office allows you to kind of bring to the table. So I think it was quite an eye-opener because you kind of see the excitement in them, just being able to go and, collaborate around the coffee machine and get free coffee and just kind of have conversations. And it's really kind of nice to see. And we can kind of see some of that dynamic coming back at the moment. But I do hope that we don't lose sight of that, because ultimately that collaborative element of being together in a space is so powerful, right, in terms of what you can achieve in those moments.
100% agree with you. It is the thing that AI will never be able to, I don't think, emulate, is that the magic that happens when two human brains sort of organically connect and feed on each other. And you overhear a conversation that makes you think of something else, and it's unquantifiable. And there's a lot of wasted time with that too, because you have to hear it's weekends, yada, yada, yada. But it builds a social kind of trust bank of relationships that then can feed, your interactions that may be over Teams or Zoom for years to come in a way that technology can. So yeah, I agree 100%. How can we keep that magic of, IRL, real life human interaction alive in this disparate remote environment?
Hey John, how do I find out what we've invoiced my client?
How can I view my outstanding WIP?
How do I submit my expenses again?
Do we have next Monday off?
Monday off?
It's exciting to have fresh faces at your law firm, but onboarding them takes a lot of time and a lot of energy when everyone is remote. You're busy enough as it is. Helm 360 has the solution. Just ask Termi, Helm 360's next level chatbot solution for knowledge management. Termi can answer many of your new hires' questions for you without distracting you or anyone else at the firm. This means fewer frantic emails, fewer help desk tickets, more time and more focused productivity for everyone at the firm. Working with Termi, you can have those eager new employees up to speed in a snap. They may never need to ask you a question again. Check out helm360.com/Termi to see Termi in action and find out how it can make onboarding new hires as easy as sending an email.
And you talk of AI, and that's actually one of the areas that I kind of wanted to touch on with you from a Thomson Reuters perspective in terms of your views. But obviously there's a lot of excitement and interest at the moment over OpenAI's GPT models and ChatGPT. Interested to get your take on that, and what's your view, and is there anything from a Thomson Reuters perspective that's coming down the pipe that may be leveraging some of that technology?
Constantly. Almost everything that we're doing has some sort of AI angle to it, and Thomson has been working with AI technology for over 30 years. Our legal research software has embedded variations of early versions of AI 25 years ago or more. Whether or not ChatGPT, that specific latest buzz technology, will be incorporated, I can neither predict nor confirm or deny, but I can, just conceptually, we made a big acquisition in an AI company last year called ThoughtTrace. It's how we're sort of tackling every customer solution. So yeah, it's a fascinating time to be in technology in general.
Indeed, yeah, moving at a very, very fast pace. So with regard to some of the other TR offerings that would be of interest to this space, we've got obviously 3Cloud, HiQ, and other products around that. I'm interested to kind of get an update from you in terms of how is the kind of cloud adoption side of things going from a Thomson Reuters perspective, and any advice for firms that may be sitting on the fence still in terms of that shift to cloud and moving to 3 cloud. What kind of advice would you have for those kind of firms?
Let's just get off the fence quickly, or you'll be left behind. No, I mean, virtually every single new deal that we're signing is a cloud deal. There's hardly anyone purchasing anything on premise anymore. And that happened really very quickly over the course of the pandemic. And I'm sure the pandemic was part of it, the cause for it, people's comfort with, I don't know where my data is. I'm working, at my home in Kent or wherever. Who knows where my data is, but I can get to it. It was just a general more sort of less fear and more acceptance to cloud stuff in general. But yeah, if you don't have plans to get all your applications to the cloud, then get some plans right away, because you will be left behind.
Absolutely. Good advice. Absolutely. Just going back to, I want to go back to the beginning of the conversation a little bit in terms of the career that you've kind of walked down that path, right? Any big lessons learned that you could share with the audience in terms of all of the experiences that you have had? Because you kind of touched so many different areas in terms of the technology side, in terms of product and service delivery, support, all of the kind of different angles. So what's your biggest lesson learned, I guess, over the years so far?
Biggest lesson learned. Boil it down to one thing. It's some sort of combination of don't sweat the small stuff and pick your battles. That we get mired in the firefighting and the chaos and the drama and the daily emergencies that come at us, and you don't see the progress that is being made. I think for me, it took quite a long time. You sort of some sort of maturity of perspective. You don't get so stressed out. It doesn't mean you're not equally as attentive to the crises and responsive to the crises, but you don't let them get inside you, because tomorrow there'll be another crisis. In a year there'll be another crisis. And they're all solvable. So don't sweat the small stuff. Pick your battles. This too shall pass. And you are making progress.
Yeah, I'm sure many can relate to that. Absolutely. Just moving on a little, I just want to talk a little bit about information overload, right? And I'm sure you can relate to this. We've got so many different channels of communication now, right? Some of them are really good and positive and aid collaboration. Like, let's talk about Microsoft Teams as a good example, right? Where we can kind of connect in a different way, and really it becomes a useful tool for conversations and for connecting with colleagues, especially in this kind of distributed model that we now live. I'm interested to get your take in terms of how you manage yourself from a productivity perspective, like any productivity hacks or tips that you can share with the audience, because certainly for me, like, I get bombarded with Teams and emails and all sorts of things. And in the old days, it was just email that we had to worry about, right? And the occasional telephone call, which I don't think anybody does anymore. But I'm interested to hear from you as to what kind of productivity techniques, hacks, software maybe that you use in your day-to-day workflow that gets you to be able to achieve something meaningful by the end of the week.
I think that's a continuing evolution as technology changes. From a personal perspective, I, at the end of last year, gave up Twitter. And I felt that added hours to my day, if not necessarily hours, but it reduced a lot of just noise in my head. And it was a little bit of a hard addiction to give up. I used to going to it for all of my news, all of my pop culture. And that's just one, it's a personal example of you always have to monitor and compromise and say no to this stream. So limiting what social media you do pay attention to is super important, because no matter what you do, it's going to interrupt your day, either your work day or your personal day in some way. I find it fascinating looking back over the last several decades of which technologies stick and which sort of are a flash in the pan that look really cool at first and then end up not surviving. And I remember when I had a Palm Pilot, I had a beeper, and I had a cell phone. All three things. I needed all three things to kind of manage my diary on the Palm Pilot, get emergency notifications on my beeper, and call people on my cell phone. But whatever happened to Palm Pilot? It was so cool. So I'm aging myself there, but there's a fine balance between jumping on every latest bandwagon and waiting a little bit to see if it's really going to take off, because you'll drive yourself crazy trying to learn every new technology. And I went in a roundabout circle to answer your question, but getting back to the beginning, I do constantly sort of relook at, what am I doing? What am I wasting time on? What is distracting to me? I try and wean myself of it. I'm not someone who ever has implemented some amazing organizational technique that I'm here to sell you. It's just a constant evolution.
Indeed. No, I think that's great advice. I think any ability to be able to disconnect a little bit from the social media world is going to free up a bunch of hours to be able to deal with the important stuff. So yeah, totally get it and agree. Thank you for that. So I just have a couple of wrap-up questions, if I may. First one, which I ask all of my guests, is if you could borrow Dr. Who's time machine and go back to Patrick at 18 years old, if you can remember that far back, what advice would you give him? And you can't give him the national lottery numbers.
What advice would I give him? Youth is wasted on the young. Like, enjoy every moment.
Good advice. And you mentioned at the beginning that you've worked in different locations. If you could choose one of the locations as being your favorite, maybe you could tell us which one and why.
Well, I loved, I spent 4 years in Zurich, and I ski. So I skied every weekend during the winter and went mountain biking every weekend in the summer. Yeah, so from a location perspective, is heaven to me.
Indeed. And just finally, any closing thoughts or advice that may benefit the legal professionals in our audience today?
The future is in value-based billing. Figure that out and you'll be successful.
Love it. Thank you very much, Patrick. It's been a pleasure to talk to you today. Really appreciate you taking time out and look forward to speaking to you again.
Thanks a lot, Bim. It's been fun. Great to chat. Take care.
Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode of The Legal Helm. Thank you as always for listening. If you enjoyed the show, please like and subscribe on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. It really helps us out.